In this movie, we'll create the central element of the magnifying glass, which is to say this large circle with this smaller circle slightly but precisely inset, using a handful of techniques that I haven't shown you so far. All right, so I'll go ahead and switch documents. I don't need any of this junk, so I'll go up to the Select menu and choose the All command, or you can press Control-A or Command-A on the Mac, and then I'll press the Backspace key or the Delete key to get rid of those shapes. Now I need a little bit of added structure, so I'm going to duplicate this center guide by going up to the View menu, choosing Guides, and then choosing the Lock Guides command to turn it off. And then I'll switch to the black arrow tool up here at the top of the toolbox, which, as you may recall, you can get by pressing the V key. And then I'll click on this vertical guide to select it. All right, now because the arrow tool is active, I can bring up the Move dialog box just by pressing the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. And now I'll go ahead and change the horizontal value to -30. The vertical value doesn't actually matter. When you're working with ruler guides, they're infinitely tall or wide. They go to the very top. In other words, they go to the extreme edges of the pasteboard. Now I want to click the Copy button, but by way of a tip here, just as you can activate the OK button by pressing the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac, you can select Copy by pressing Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac. The idea being that the Alt or Option key allows you to duplicate objects in Illustrator. All right, now I want to select this original guide once again, press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to bring up the Move dialog box. The reason it's appearing like nothing is happening is because the old guide has moved on to the new one. And that's a function of repeating our last position value. But what I really want is a horizontal value of 280 points, which is going to move the guide over here. And then I'll once again press Alt-Enter or Option-Return in order to copy that guide. All right, now I'll click off the guide to deselect it, and I'll go up to the View menu, choose Guides, and choose Lock Guides in order to make sure that we don't mess up our guides in the future. All right, now I need a little extra room to work, so I'm going to press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to zoom out slightly. And then I'll go ahead and move my floating toolbar up here to the top left corner of the screen, and I'll select the Ellipse tool. Now, let's say you know exactly how big you want your ellipse to be. In that case, you can just go ahead and click with the Ellipse tool to bring up the Ellipse dialog box, and then you can enter some values. So let's say I change the width value to 300 points, and I change the height value to 200 points. Notice this link icon right there. If you turn it on, you're not going to make the width and height values the same. Rather, you're going to link the ratio. So in other words, if I were to now change the width value to 600 points, which is twice 300, I would increase the height value to twice 200 points, which is 400 points. That's not what I want, however, so I'm going to turn this link off, and I'm going to dial in 422 for both the width and height values because I want to create a circle, at which point I'll click OK to create that shape. And notice it's coming in unfilled and unstroked, which is not what I want. So I'll go ahead and click this down pointing arrowhead next to the line weight value, and I will select 1 point. All right, problem is the shape isn't coming in where I want it to be. I want it to be centered right there on the intersection of those two guidelines. And naturally, I could just switch to the black arrow tool and drag it into place. And you can drag a shape, I'll just demonstrate this, by first pressing the V key to switch to the black arrow tool, and then dragging its center point. So ellipses and rectangles all have center points by default inside of Illustrator, and that would allow me to just snap it into place. But let's say I'd like to create it right the first time. Then I'll press the Backspace key or the Delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. And then I'll once again switch to my Ellipse tool. And finally, instead of clicking, I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And notice that changes the appearance of my cursor, at which point I'll go ahead and click right there. So I'm Alt-clicking or Option-clicking at the intersection of those two guides. That brings up those same values I entered before. And so if I click OK, I will now see my circle centered at exactly the right location. All right, let's go ahead and zoom in here so that we can see the circle a little larger on screen. Now I want to create that inset circle, and I want it to be 12 points smaller. And I mean that all the way around, so 6 points smaller on all sides. I could, of course, just Alt-click or Option-click again and create a new circle, or I could modify this existing one. And to do the latter, it's a two-step technique. You first have to create a copy of this shape. The best way to copy a shape at its current location is to go up to the Edit menu and choose the Copy command. That's Control-C or Command-C on the Mac. And then you return to the Edit menu and you choose Paste in Front. That's Control F or Command F on the Mac. And even though it doesn't look like anything's happened, if I were to Control or Command drag that shape, you can see I now have two of them. And so anytime you want to create a duplicate of a shape right where it is, so you're effectively cloning the shape on the fly, it's Control C, Control F. Or on the Mac, Command C, Command F, right in a row. All right, so I'll just go ahead and undo that movement there. Now I want to make this shape 12 points smaller in either direction. And to do that, click on the word Transform up here in the Control panel. Or if you're not seeing Transform, you can click on the X, Y, W, or H. Either one of those options will bring up the Transform panel. And notice we're seeing the width and height values listed right here. We're also seeing this little reference point matrix, which tells us how we're going to go about scaling the shape. We want to scale it with respect to its center, so make sure that center point is selected. You also want to make sure this chain icon is on, and if you have any doubts, you can click on it to turn it off. That will unlink the two values. Click again to turn it on. That will link these two values together. And now I can click inside the width value at the end of it right there, and then enter -12 in order to subtract 12 points. And as soon as I press the Tab key, you can see that both the width and height values update to 422 minus 12, which equals 410 points, as we can see. Now notice a little bit of a problem here. Check out this line weight value up here. It was 1 point, now it's 0.972 points, so it's ever so slightly different. The original is just fine, by the way. If you Control or Command click on it, you'll see that it's still 1 point. I'll go ahead and Control or Command click on this inset circle instead. The problem is an option that's at work by default in the Transform panel. So if you click on Transform to bring it back, and then click on the flyout menu icon in the upper right corner, you'll see a check mark in front of Scale, Strokes, and Effects. Go ahead and choose that command to turn it off. And that way, we will not scale our strokes in the future. You will, however, have to fix this one by returning to the Control panel, clicking this down pointing arrowhead, and once again, choosing 1 point. And that's how you create a circle of a specific size and inset another one precisely inside of it here inside Illustrator.